we just trust each other and have this reciprocity.
Right.
And that just should be the goal, I think, for all your relationships, is to find friends where you feel that way, to find another married couple where you feel that way, to find another group of parents.
There you go. Yeah.
And if you're a business owner, to find another business owner that's similar. I can't believe it's been a year. I've learned so much working with you about myself and about the world and about business and about my relationship.
Great.
It's amazing what mentorship will do, right?
Do you think it's mentorship? I think it's a little different.
Do you? Tell me.
It's we call it thought partnering for a reason, because it's peer to peer. Like we're equals. We're both operators. And CEOs and C-level officers and owners like yourself don't necessarily want to be coached or mentored, right? Mentor has this notion of one person above the other, and we're not. Like we enter into a room, we close the door, and we confidentially speak about challenges and opportunities and issues that you're facing.
Right.
Right. But we do it as like we're equals, and I like that, and people like that, and CEOs like that, and they want to. So I tend to get away from terms like coaching and mentorship.
Well, that's interesting, because I definitely did not feel like you're equal at all. I felt like when we first started, I felt very like I did not know what I was doing. I was just doing my best to get from A to B to try and help run this podcast business that Bert built that just got really big and needed someone to kind of manage. So I definitely, when we started, felt like you were a mentor. Maybe you're right. Maybe that is the right term, but it is a teacher-student dynamic also. But not really. I guess when you put it that way, Michael, it makes a little more sense, because really what you do is just draw answers out of me.
That's right. That's right. You nailed it. And then, and you're the one who has to hit the ball, right? You're the one who has to take accountability and responsibility for the issues of the day and what we learn together in thought partnering, right? All I do is manage the process. All I do is manage the tools and the whiteboard, and that, as you said, extracts from you the issues of the day. You and I prioritize them together, make sure that we're focusing on the right thing in that instant, right? And then if you look back at all of our sessions, a majority of them, the answers or the next step flow from you, right? I'm not didactic. I'm not telling you that this is what you should do, right?
No.
It's never that way. I'm not prescriptive.
No,
right?
You're not.
Right.
How did you get into this field?
So little background on this field is, first of all, I've had the same thought partner for 30 years.
You have a thought partner?
Yeah. Every week. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Every shrink needs a shrink. Every chiropractor needs a chiropractor.
I guess so. I hadn't thought about it like that.
So I was in investment banking, then went to go found this company, found it. I'm a founder of this company called UGO Entertainment, the entertainment media company. And I got in there and found out that I loved managing people. I loved the dynamic of creating success. And I loved learning from my mistakes as a manager, as an operator for 12 years. And I became a self-taught expert, if you will, in organizational behavior and organizational design, which is what you and I talk about a good part of our time together, OB and OD. And so after I sold my company, after 12 years, I founded this company, the Thought Partnering Company, MCM Venture Partners, and started with startups. So I subsequently helped found and launch 5 startups.
Wow.
Yeah. And this advisory business just stemmed naturally from all that. And I love it so much and so fulfilling that I stuck with it. I've been doing it for 15 years.
That's great. That's so cool. So you were investment banking? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
I did not enjoy it.
What does that mean? What does investment banking mean?
Sure. And I do it now today too, in conjunction with my thought partnering. So it's two ends of my current business. Investment banking, primarily, I focus on family-owned businesses and entrepreneurial businesses to advise them on selling their company. That's my acute focus, primarily in the media and entertainment space. But I'm a generalist. More broadly, investment banking is advising companies on raising capital, debt and equity, selling their company, buying companies. I focus on the sell side in M&A.
So what drew you to like family-owned businesses?
Great question. Because it's my investment banking practice currently works with all the people I thought partnered with. And so the thought partnering business gravitates towards people like yourself in a family-owned business, in a very interesting entrepreneurial environment, right? And that's where I can help most dramatically because there's so many levers and knobs to pull. Right? Do you feel that way? Do you feel that you are a good match for a thought partnering? We've been doing it a year.
You mean in what we do together?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think I'm a thought partner by nature. You know, like
cool.
I thrive.
I told you we were equals.
Yeah, well, I guess I either that way. I, sought out and work therapy like it means something to me. I think I do that with almost everything. I love when I ran my Girl Scout troop. It was very similar to what we do about this business. We would whiteboard, what does this year look like?
I love
what
it.
do we want the girls to learn? And what do we want them to experience? And what do we want them to avoid? And how do we craft the year? We didn't just open the manual and teach it as written. Because I just think that anything worth doing is worth doing thoughtfully and well, if possible. And so I think for me as a person, thought partnering was like, as soon as Leo said, I have the guy for you, I was like, let's go. Let's do it. I don't think I've canceled much on us either. I make every week because
yeah, you do.
Some weeks, just like with therapy, some weeks where you think you're not learning anything, all of a sudden, the last 5 minutes, you've learned the most important thing you've been working on for months. It's such an amazing part of life to be reflective and to be curious and to say, how can I do this differently, more efficiently, better? How can I make everyone more happy? Where's the win-win? Why do I keep repeating this? All those questions are indicators to how you can make things better.
Right. Right.
I think my brain has worked that way for a long time. I just had no experience in the world of business. And
I have seen an incredible amount of professional growth in you over the past year.
Oh, shucks, thanks.
but it's true, and I'm not here to blow smoke. And this is, but I want to, and I let you know that, right?
You do.
And I also let people know when, they're stagnating and they're not moving forward, and sometimes we go our separate ways. But I see, your arc of growth has been amazing, and a lot of it is because you do take the action that we talk about. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, I do.
You call it homework. Go, Michael, I did my homework. And you come back every week going, boom, boom, boom. We talk about boom, 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 like check, check, check. And this is the result.
Yes. I was an excellent lab partner. In chemistry, I know everybody would be like, ooh, I got LeeAnn as a lab partner because I love doing the experiments and I love writing the report about it.
That's cool. Dissecting the frog.
What's that?
Dissecting the frog.
Loved it. And then I loved writing the report about it because I loved understanding what I understood. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Because a report on paper looks just like a report, but really it's a physical manifestation of what you understand. So when you assign homework to me, for me to do the homework is a physical manifestation of my understanding of what we just worked on. So that's how I think I've always loved homework. Like when I was little, I loved homework, which is such a dorky thing to say, but it's true. I think, and reflecting on why did I love homework, it's because I loved understanding what I understood and understanding what I didn't understand, and say, I don't understand how to work this math problem. Can you help me figure this out?
Right.
And I think anybody in business, one of the things that I have personally, not to talk about myself this whole time, but I think I am okay knowing my limitations.
Right.
Like, I'm super cool hearing someone say, you're out of your depth, or discovering it myself.
Right.
Saying, this is not my lane. I shouldn't be in this lane. I don't really have a problem with that. So I think it makes learning a little easier.
Yeah, you pointed that out where you think you're out of your lane or you've hit a limit or a wall. We had a discussion last week about an internal challenge you had, and we worked through it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you are pushing the boundaries. If you have a line of your limitations, I mean, the work we do together in thought partnering, we're always challenging that, questioning that, and pushing and learning.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a constant learner. That's why you do make a great thought partner.
Oh, thanks.
Tell me, you mentioned going to therapy, right? And I'm very clear when I meet somebody. I say I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist. It's great when my other thought partner is seeing a psychologist, or a therapist or whatever a person is in that trade. And there's a great, in my practice, there's a great, I think, overlap of those concentric circles of therapy and thought partnering, right? Because our business is very, very work focused, job focused, operations focused.
Yes.
Do you feel that synergy? Do you feel that 1 + 1 = 3 when we thought partner together?
Yes, I do. As I take what we talk about into my therapy, and then I take what I talk about into therapy into what we talk about.
Yeah, that's great.
And now that Bert and I just started couples therapy, which the entire world knows already because he's told everybody. I think we don't talk about work in therapy, but the dynamic that we struggle with at work is also in our marriage. So I think we talk about the dynamic that we struggle with in our marriage, and it just kind of also shifts or alleviates at work. Now, since family-owned business is your focus, what do you think is the biggest challenge for people who have family-owned businesses?
Yeah, it's that inability for most people, right, to create that Chinese wall between personal life and the business life. And it's so hard. And inevitably, they're going to overlap, right? That's point one. Point two is people in their personal relationships often experience and share a lot of emotions and have discussions and use a tone of their voice in their home life that they would never use in an office.
Right.
But
that's right.
So when people in family-owned businesses, brothers, sisters, husband, wife, brothers, see it all the time. They bring that same tone, the non-office tone, into the home discussion about business, and that's where some challenges arise, right? So what we work on a lot is, in family-owned business, recognizing different territories, right? I think we talked about you and Bert having business discussions in this room and not in your kitchen at home.
Yes.
Does
or
that
for
work?
him, he prefers at the pub.
Okay, good enough. Good enough.
That seems to be the most effective. Once we go can we whiteboard something? I've lost him.
Right,
but again,
right.
it took me forever. I mean, way longer than I feel like it should have to figure out, it still needs to feel like fun. Like we may be having a conversation about money and it may not be as like his favorite conversation, but it still needs to be fun. And
Sure.
How do I put the element of fun in it? I mean, I could never get him to do company-wide meetings until he said to me, well, I'll do it if it's a party.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, our first company-wide meeting, it was piñata and tacos and a party. And we had I hate referencing Girl Scouts, but in Girl Scouts, we built in the first 15 minutes is completely unstructured. Let them talk, let them snack, let them run around, they'll play around, do whatever. 15 minutes, we're not going to talk to you. Then we'll start the meeting. So you're there for an hour and a half, but 15 minutes you just know automatically is just fine.
Right.
And so that's what we did in our company meetings is we go, we all have lunch together and we kept bringing lunch. We had a piñata, just shoot the shit
Great.
for X amount of time. And now let's talk business instead of being like 10:30, everyone in the conference room. That just isn't Bert's thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm so efficient. I'm like 10:30, everybody in the conference room. We bang this out 15 minutes, we're all done. And that's just not how his brain works. So I think it's hard. One of the challenges here in this house is that he and I function very differently. And one is not better or worse than the other. They're just very different. And so trying to find the middle ground of,
there you go.
Let's have a party so that I can get my agenda handled just took some time.
Right.
You know, I think the good thing about working with a think partner is that you only think from your own experience, right? I may have only read one book about business. Well, a think partner has a completely different set of experiences that they can bring to the table without a real agenda.
That's right.
About how you run your business, right? Or the tone of voice you use, or it just kind of gives another resource that can really roll their sleeves up and get dirty with whatever you want to get dirty with, so you can take it back into the team as a real asset.
That's exactly right. Perfect description of thought partnering. And in the room, it's a safe zone, right? The doors closed. The confidentiality is key, and you get to step out of the business, right, and explore the issues of the day in a verbal, visual, and visceral way when we put it up on the whiteboard, right, and focusing on what we should be focusing on that day, and you're great at it.
Thank you.
Bert's come in a couple times on some thought partner sessions, and how do you think he's reacted to it? And is it has it been effective in the things we bring him in on?
How has he reacted to it? He's almost always resistant to come in, and every time he leaves, he says that was so helpful.
That's great.
So, but that's the same for him for everything.
Right.
For going to get his teeth cleaned, he'll kick and scream, and then as soon as he's done, he goes, "God, I'm glad I got done with that." That's just how he processes, anything that's not overtly fun.
Right.
And he is the great thing about Bert is he is so smart, really, really intelligent guy, and he really wants things to work better. He doesn't get stuck too much. He does sometimes, but not too much in it has to be a certain way. If someone has an idea he can get on board with.
Right.
He's not easily influenced. So you can't just say, "Hey, how about this?" and he just do it. But if whatever we suggest makes sense to him, he can totally get on board with that and will do that.
Right.
And I think that's what's happened with when he's come into the Thought Partners is that whatever we've been discussing, he's understood and then gets on board with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And takes the action.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
He's good. He's a different person when he's in here. And I think you make him feel very comfortable.
Yeah.
In talking about the business.
I don't know. I think sometimes I make him feel really uncomfortable. I think he just it fills him with dread sometimes talking about the business. But, I think I do make him feel like there's a lot of things handled that he doesn't have to worry about for sure.
And you talked about the family-owned businesses and businesses, family members working together, particularly husband and wife. And I see this a lot. I have a lot of husband and wife clients. I have a lot of brother clients, father-son. And we've worked towards what works best for you and Bert to talk about the business and what situation, what tone, and moving you back full circle towards being his close creative partner, right? That has come a long way.
I think so.
In the year
yes,
we've working together.
100%. Yes, it has come a long way.
And arranging your business and company life to allow you to go where you need to go as husband, wife, and as business owners and as creative partners, right? I would mark that up as one of our biggest successes that you and I have had to date.
I think so. Right. It has been. Yeah. And we definitely continue to move in that direction, which is making me happy.
Right.
Wife of the Party is sponsored by Acre Gold. You know how having a family and an incredible husband is invaluable and continues to amaze over time? It's kind of similar to gold, which is why we've partnered with a company called Acre Gold. Financial experts and big banks agree the value of gold is climbing new heights in 2025 and beyond. So how do you get in? Buying gold can feel complicated and expensive, but Acre Gold subscriptions make it easy and affordable. With subscriptions from $30 to $250 per month, Acre Gold makes gold ownership a reality for every budget. How does it work? Make automatic monthly payments into your stash until you reach the price of an Acre Gold bar. Once you pay for your bar, Acre Gold discreetly ships it to your door. Markets go up and down, but gold has stood the test of time. It's real, it's solid, and now it's easier than ever to own. Secure your wealth and take control of your future. Start today at acregold.com. When you think about companies with healthy sales, like Chubby's, Aloe, Magic Spoon, or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, an attractive brand, and marketing that lifts a heavy load. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business making selling, and for shoppers buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in the store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. We've been using Shopify for years. It makes running a business accessible for everybody. I love the user-friendliness of the back of the house reports that you can run on sales, on inventory, on shipping, on anything you need. Shopify can do it for you. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout BBP uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/wife, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/wife to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/wife. When it became obvious that someone was going to have to run this company, we have, for people who listening, we have a podcast company that produces a lot of Bert's promos for shows and the sizzles you see in his live show and any kind of commercial type advertising that arenas run. We do that in-house here, and we have about 13 employees, and someone had to be like the quote, the boss. And Leo, Bert's business manager, who's been a guest on here several times, had said to me, you know, comedians don't typically get into comedy to be a CEO. They get into comedy to be a comedian. And at this point, he has all these employees. He needs a CEO. He needs someone who's running everything here. And so we hired someone to help with that. And in hiring that someone, it became apparent to both of us that we still needed a CEO. Like, that person did great work, but still needed someone to ask advice of, to have guidance from, to be in charge, to be able to make critical decisions, which was all going to Bert. And then I was like, well, someone has to do it. And the only one who really can do it is me, because I'm the only person who knows everything, who knows all of Bert's history, who knows all of his relationships in Hollywood, who can intermediate between his management, his agents, your mom's house. I'm the only one that knows everything. So I was the only choice. But I had never had employees. I managed an apartment building and I had a janitor. That's it, one person. And so to come in and take, obviously we didn't have all 13 to start with, but we had, at that point, I think we had like 4 or 5, and then just kept adding and adding and adding people.
That's great.
It was a lot. And I bring all that up so that anyone listening who maybe recently started a business with a family member knows that it was not easy.
That's right. Of course.
It was really hard. And there was a lot of patience and failing and tantruming and fighting and confusion and frustration in the beginning. It was really hard because it was with my husband.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
All classic symptoms of a husband and wife run business. And you and I recognize that and work that in and weave that into our work together, right? So when we come in and, our thought partnering sessions are like a practice field, right? And we role play it, we push back and forth, we push and pull on the logic and what should be done in this working relationship, right? And you go out and do it, right? You're doing work on your personal and your familiar relationship with your couples therapist. And we're doing something similar as it pertains to the business. And you're great at taking that action.
That's right. But I think that it just needed to be said aloud.
That's right.
That it is really hard to work with a family member. It just adds, there's so many times where I've said in my own head, I hope Bert's not listening to this, but I've in my own head said, if this weren't Bert, I would quit this job.
That's right.
Like, there's no way I would do this job. That happens. Like, that's a real feeling.
That's right.
And when you're in business with family, that's not a real option, right? It's not always an option that you can just walk away from the business you own with your brother or your dad that you're inheriting. Maybe it is for some people, but in my case, it really wasn't an option for me to just go and goodbye. But I could still have that feeling to be frustrated and go and have to then manage my feelings with myself about staying in a job where I felt like I was out of my depth or constantly making mistakes or not understanding what made Bert happy or was helpful or was on par with his vision, which is, the whole company is based on him. It's not like we're making widgets. It's all about his brand and his talent. So ultimately, everything really does need to make him happy. And that's very different than managing an apartment building where you have a boss who's looking at profit and loss, and a lot of it's very fact-based. This is hard to figure out sometimes. What works today may not work tomorrow, not because Bert is like a crazy person, but because he's an artist.
Right.
And so his vision is always ahead of what my vision is and everybody else's I know. So, and that's hard. It's almost having a tiger by the tail, right? Where the tiger's running and you're just holding on. And at a certain point in the beginning, I'd be like, I could just let go of this tail. I think it'd be okay. But you can't really do that sometimes.
And yes, you're right. You've made what's been passive, we made it explicit, right? And in family-owned businesses and husband-wife teams, they both have to be happy, right? You have to be happy. You mentioned making him happy.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time making you happy running the business or working towards that.
Yes.
Happier. How's that?
Yeah.
Because my job as thought partner is to help you get to where you need to be and where you want to be.
Yes.
And hopefully they're the same place.
Yes.
Right. And that's what we are always working towards. That's our strategic intent of working together. Right. And where you want to be, right, is be happy in your working relationship. And you want to be happy in knowing that the organization is designed so that you can focus also on your creative endeavors. Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel we're going in that direction?
Yes.
Great.
100%.
Great.
And I'm not unhappy in this job. I was just talking about having moments. Having moments where you're like, I would so be out of here if I was not married to this person.
Right.
For the job, not for the marriage,
right,
but just for the job. Just for the job. And I'm sure people listening have felt that way about working with their brother or their spouse, where like, if this wasn't my brother, I wouldn't work in this job anymore. I would never want anyone to think I ever felt like I would walk out on Bert. I don't think that's what you're saying. I'm just clarifying. I was never unhappy in my marriage relative to the job. I was just sometimes frustrated with the job.
Sure.
And that added layer of being in business with a family member just makes it complicated.
That's the layer that makes it complicated.
Yeah, it makes it complicated.
And we have to assume that as a constant, right? If you're not going to be out of here or go or leave the job, then it's there. It's a permanent. So we weave that into, gosh, 90+% of the decisions we make about the organization, about your strategy, about your operations, about where you're going next. And so to answer your question, that's the challenge of working in family-owned businesses. But I love it. It's great. It's rewarding.
It's got to be fascinating.
Yeah.
Is it just forever fascinating? Now, do you see that the tensions or the complications in those are fairly standard in family-owned busines's?
Yes.
Can you go in and go, oh, I already know the problem before we even start talking? Can you do it like that?
Yes and no. I mean, there are some guidelines to follow that I follow, but they're all so unique and so different. Like if you think about our first session together, and my question to you is going to be, what do you remember from our first session? But that was where we started to sense our chemistry, right? But you inevitably had to talk about this being a family-owned husband-wife business. Do you remember our first session together?
I remember my feeling from that first
session.
Tell
me about your feeling.
I don't really remember what you talked about.
More importantly, tell me about the feeling.
I had many feelings in that first session. One was I got to finally get a lot of frustration off my chest.
There you go.
And I felt relieved and also a little daunted by having to figure this out. Growth in any part of your life is work. Growth doesn't just happen in a vacuum.
Right.
Growth is something that you apply force to and cause change, right? Like rolling a rock down a mountain. You can't just look at it and hope it starts rolling. You have to apply force to it. That's the way. So once we started, then I knew that I was going to have to shift my accountability to something very specific. So my accountability was a little all over the place because I didn't really understand business in the way that you understand business. And so I know a lot of what we talked about early on was I don't have the words to say the right thing to an employee. So if an employee comes in and says, I want to take every Friday off. And I just go, well, that's ridiculous. And no. And I needed someone to say, well, in the business world, you would say something like this, which seems really dumb, I guess, maybe to some people, but I just don't have the language. I don't have a degree. I don't have a college degree. I didn't take a single business class in college. And I don't have, my dad owned a mechanic shop where he had like one employee. So I don't really have any personal experience of someone actually managing people in a business-like fashion. So I felt like I had a lot to learn. And I was relieved. And also it kind of just allowed all the frustration to come to the surface.
Right.
So I remember feeling relieved and frustrated at the same time.
That's great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. And that's it's part of the alchemy of this thought partnering, right? It's not complete science. It's a lot of behavior. It's a lot of these feelings. That's why I'm asking you, like, what did you experience? How did you feel? That's the most important. And you make a point about not knowing what to say, right? And so I have a lot of experience in that. You have a challenge in front of you. We put those together. I put a framework around it. We thought partner back and forth, like your example with not knowing what to say to an employee about X, Y, Z, right? Mm-hmm. And so in the room on the whiteboard and back and forth, we practiced, right? Practice. That feeds the success. That feeds the growth that you're talking about as a business person,
right?
And there's not many people you can practice with. I mean, you're at the top of the food chain, and sometimes you must feel lonely in your inability to exchange something with who's an external person who is objective, and that's me. That's what I need to bring to this room.
That is what you brought. Because I am a collaborator by nature. I'm very collaborative. I've always been better in a collaboration scenario than by myself. So, and to be honest, it's not fair for me to expect Bert to be my always collaborator in this position. That's unfair. Someone gave me really good marital advice a long time ago. And that advice was, don't expect everything from your spouse, because he's not supposed to be everything. He's not supposed to be your girlfriend.
Right.
He's not supposed to be your mom or your dad or your daughter or son. He's supposed to be your spouse and your partner. So he can be a lot or even most of what you need, but you can't have that person be everything.
Right.
Because then you as a person are very limited. Getting advice, opinion, fun, enrichment, enjoyment, negativity, arguments from an array of people is much more growth oriented and enriching than it just coming from one. But I remember feeling like I had no place to place what I was frustrated with in my office. Mm-hmm. I couldn't place it in Bert's lap because he didn't, A, need the stress of half the stuff I was stressed about.
There you go.
And B, didn't want a wife who just complained all the time.
Right.
And that's actually not who I am either. But I didn't have a place to put it. So in Think Partnering, I knew, much like in therapy, Fridays, 1 to 2:30, I can complain to Michael for 15 minutes and he will not stop me because I'm not a big complainer without any action, forward action. And then we can come up with real solutions to whatever I'm complaining about. I can hold it till Friday. And it just relieved so much of me not having anywhere to place it because, yeah, I could complain to my girlfriends about it, but they don't know who all my employees are. Right. They don't understand what our company does. They just are supportive to me and just say, well, that sucks and that's stupid. And why would that happen? But there's no solution to that. Right. There's relief.
Right.
But relief without action is just cyclical. It'll just come right back.
That's right.
So unless you have some kind of action connected with that relief, you're just going to keep repeating it.
That's right.
So, and I couldn't get that from Bert, and nor should I have.
No.
So yeah, I think the Think Partnering was super important. I think about the only other family-owned business I have experience with is my dad. For a brief time, owned a convenience store with his brother and sister-in-law, his brother's wife. And they have always gotten along so great. And they even got along owning the business together. But there definitely were like, I thought you would be doing this, but you're not. And no one was communicating with each other. And it ended up kind of falling apart. Now, I was here. I wasn't there. I didn't see the day-to-day. I don't know anybody's side but my dad's. My dad doesn't have a super negative side, but he definitely had opinions about who was supposed to do what part of the work and who wasn't and how it all shook down. And I think that's fair. I'm sure Steve and Phyllis, my aunt and uncle, would have, opposite or maybe the same opinions, and that's all good. But I just remember the inaction my dad took for the problems he was having.
There you go.
And I went, well, that doesn't work. I think he was so concerned at not upsetting them if he had a negative note.
Right.
Like, hey, I thought you were going to mop at the end of the day or whatever, and you didn't. And instead of saying that because it's family.
That's right.
He'd just eat it.
That's right. And holding back and not pursuing the right actions will eventually have a negative impact on the business.
Right.
Because remember, at the end of the day, we were in business together. It'll inhibit it from growing. It'll inhibit it from pursuing the right challenges, pursuing the right opportunities. Mm-hmm. Each of your daughters, both of your daughters, have sat in on our thought partnering session separately.
Yeah.
And what was their feedback afterwards?
They both thought it was really awesome. Both of them left and was like, that was really awesome. I think I know for Georgia because she told me. I don't know for Isla for sure. So I'm just suspecting Isla's interpretation of it, but Georgia told me she saw my, quote, fire hosing qualities in a different light. So in my household, I am accused of being a fire hoser. A fire hoser is someone who comes at you with a lot of information all at once. Right? But if it's not directed at you, which it wasn't in our Think Partner, I think it allowed Georgia at least to see how my brain works.
That's great.
and to say, oh, wow, I knew my mom was smart, but I didn't know she was that kind of smart. And I didn't know that she cared that much or thought that deeply. So when she comes at me with this fire hosing stuff, it's because she's really thought, she's been working on this for a minute. It's not just off the cuff. It's something she's really been like noodling over.
Love to hear
and
that.
trying to figure out. Georgia repeatedly said to me after our session how proud she was of me.
Oh, fantastic.
And how impressed she was with how I thought. And how cool it was to watch us think through and whiteboard
it's
through
great. Wow.
something.
Well,
Yeah,
that makes me feel great.
Isla's never been as verbally expressive, ever.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, that was cool.
That's great.
That was it.
Are they entering the family business or are they already in the family business?
No, I don't think they have much interest at this point in entering the family business. I think Isla would like me and her to start flipping houses together so she can design them and I can just be the money bags. I think she would like that. And
that would be a family business unto itself.
You know.
There you go.
But what's cool about those girls, what we've done, I think, and I would highly recommend family-owned businesses doing this. I worked for my dad when I was 13.
Okay.
So my dad had this mechanic shop.
Right.
He had one helper. So he did all his own billing. He did all his own account bookkeeping. He did all his own banking. So at 13, he had me start bookkeeping for him.
Okay.
Like the old school ledger, right? The big notebook ledger that had the, all the columns on it where you filled in the invoice, that you invoice somebody and how much the parts cost, how much the labor cost, how much you billed them totally, what's the markup, what's the tax, like in each column, and having to cross-reference it with all of his receipts and all of his invoices and balance his checkbook. So I did all of that kind of stuff starting at 13. I did that 13, 14, 15, and then at 16, I was still doing that and running parts for him and driving his tow truck. So
you did take business classes.
I guess.
4 years. It sounds better than business school.
I guess so.
Oh my gosh. There's no better way to learn that stuff than doing it as you did at such a young age.
I did it at a young age. And then I had the good fortune of having one class in high school called basic math. I don't know why they called it basic math because really it's practical math. It really was about exactly what I was already doing for my dad. How to balance a checkbook, how to file your taxes, how to deal with a ledger system type of bookkeeping, what's an APR on your credit card, how do you get a home loan, what is interest on a loan and what does that mean? I had a basic math class and that class was taught for the vocational school students.
Oh, great.
Kids who went to learn to be a plumber, an electrician. So they thought, well, they're going to own their own business. They'll probably be a one-man show. They need all this practical math. The college-bound kids did not get that practical math class. I only got it because I had no more math classes to take in my rural Georgia high school. I'd already taken every advanced math class.
Great.
So my last quarter, senior year of high school, I took that class. And I think that was so incredibly helpful at something like looking at a profit and loss statement. I already did that without knowing I was doing that by just looking at my own finances and looking at the finances from my dad's shop.
Right.
So whatever someone's family business is, I think it's great for kids to work. Our kids both worked on Fully Loaded. Georgia worked for 2 summers. Isla worked for 1 summer. And I wasn't their boss. I purposefully was not their boss.
Right.
But they worked. Right. And I think when they started working on Fully Loaded, they started understanding what their dad did and then slowly what their mom did. Like, I don't think it was this kind of way out there. He tells jokes. I don't really get it because they never went to see his shows.
Oh, okay.
But when Fully Loaded happened, I think maybe not immediately, but over time, I think both kids were like, whoa, this is like a production. And my dad and mom are running this. This is kind of crazy. So they haven't been involved in a lot of the financial pieces of like I did.
Right.
But I did with my Girl Scout troop leader, we developed a 5-week course that was my basic math class, basically.
Wow, awesome.
I found my old textbook and bought it on eBay and got my old textbook from that basic math class and developed like a bookkeeping, accounting type program for Girl Scouts and taught our Girl Scouts. And they told us it was the worst thing we'd ever done. That it was horrible. But
they're benefiting from it, I'm sure.
I think they are by now. But I think having your kid work in your home, your family-owned business it was really valuable for me looking back to understand just the basics of how business works. Wife of the Party is sponsored by Acorns. April is Financial Literacy Month. That's right. They made a whole month reminding you to finally take control of your money. Good news is you don't need 30 days. Acorns makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future in just 5 minutes. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change. You can create your Acorns account and start investing in just 5 minutes. You don't need to feel like financial wellness is impossible. Acorns gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track. Basically, Acorns does the hard part so you can give your money a chance to grow. Everyone in our office has signed up for an Acorns account. It's really surprising how quickly that spare change amasses over time. You're going to shop anyway. Why not have an Acorns account? Take that money and maybe you can grow it, because that's what we do. Sign up now and join the over 14 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $25 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/wife or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/wife.
That explains a lot. You're working so young on the general ledger and the P&L. You said you didn't go to business school, but you did. You went to a probably more legit business school than getting a Harvard MBA, and because now it's making a lot of sense to me, because the numbers and the P&Ls and the profit loss conversations with you, they come so naturally to you. And I'm like, wow, it's either your DNA or you worked for your father in the shop.
I worked for my dad in the shop
from age 13
for a long time.
Yeah, and I hope you're feeling an increasing amount of comfort in those discussions. We bring Leo in, and Leo and I work together to analyze the P&Ls, and then the three of us work together to present them to Bert and walk him through it. Right. And you're amazing at it. You really are. And I'm not blowing smoke. You are. It's now making a lot of sense as to why you're so damn good at the numbers and the P&Ls and the financial discussions.
Old Jimmy Kemp, that guy, just put me to work. Free child labor.
Free child labor.
He taught me how to forge his signature when I was 13 so I could write all his checks for all his bills. So yeah, thank you, Daddy.
What other recommendations do you have for family-owned businesses or husband-wife businesses or father-son businesses? What other recommendations or advice can you give?
I have several things, I think, from working with you and from kind of the way Bert and I have been always. One thing I would say is that I haven't been great at this with Bert in business, but in personal life, it's been really great. We do this thing called the Summit, where once a year or so, we just kind of have a business meeting about our marriage. And we're not as good about doing that with business. I'd like to get better about it. Okay. To just in that, what we do in our personal summit is we basically say, here's where we are financially and here's our goal. Here's where we are personally as an individual and here's our goal. Here's where we are as a couple and here's our goal. Here's where we are with our kids and here's our goal. Here's where we want a vacation. Here's where we want to invest money. Here's where we want to sell this car and buy this car. We just kind of pack it into one meeting. And obviously you can talk about it the rest of the year if you want to, but just knowing you have this one kind of idea dump where nothing is personal, nothing's taken personally.
Great. Wow, that's
where
powerful.
You just kind of know that this meeting is about laying it all on the table and so that you can have a real honest conversation about it. I would like to do that in business, and I would think that would be very helpful to have like even if it's just a once yearly or twice yearly, let's really dig into what's working and what's not working, make some changes based on that, because we did always in our marriage go, oh, well, that's good to know. Let's not do that. Here's a perfect example. I used to book vacations for all of us without asking Bert. I'd go, so July 4th, we're going to my dad's house to the lake. And he'd be like, we are? And I went, well, you're so busy. You don't even know your calendar. And I want it booked in January. So it's off my plate. But that caused him a lot of anxiety.
Got it.
And so, but I would never have known that if we hadn't sat down at a summit and said, well, what does our vacation look like for this year? Or for this summer, or for spring break. And that way I get what I need because I get actionable items and he gets what he needs and that he feels included in the decision-making process. Even if he says, I can't answer that now, I know I have an answer at least. So I wasn't just taking action without his input. And then I wasn't taking inaction because I wasn't dealing with it. It was a perfect kind of middle. So we both got what we needed. I would like to be better at that in business. That's one thing I would say. Another thing I would say would be, we're pretty fancy here in LA with my Think partner, with his own Think partner company. But I grew up in a town of 1,600 people where there's no Think partner. But I guarantee you there's someone in your town who's a business owner, who's doing a good job running a business, that I guarantee you, especially if you're in a hometown like my hometown, would be happy to sit down with you once a month and have a cup of coffee.
Great.
And discuss.
Absolutely.
And agree to keep things private or discreet, if nothing else. I feel like sometimes people who listen to hear things like Think Partner and go, well, I could never do that. But I completely disagree with that.
Great.
I think that you could find someone in your church, someone in your local community, and don't laugh at me, but in your like Shriners Club or whatever people do at the VFW, just where people hung out in my hometown, that you admire as a business person. And you know what's even cool to me is to find out how someone is maybe not doing as good a job as you think they are, because then it makes them human, which gives you permission to be human also.
There you go.
So just find someone in your hometown.
Great suggestion.
That you can kind of be that Think partner for each other.
There you go.
Because if you and I are equals,
that's right.
Then in theory, that person would be an equal also.
There you go.
Right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And call it whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it finding a mentor, and whatever works for you, whatever works for them in the dynamic. For us, we're working as equal thought partners. That works phenomenally well, I think, in my opinions. Those are great recommendations.
I think so.
You talked about a summit on the business in where you want to be and where you should be in your business related to where he is. It sounds like, well, I know that we have talked about most of those items, and going forward, we can weave those together and piece them together for a business summit with Bert.
I think we have a business meeting planned on Monday that I think is going to be kind of like that.
Right.
Just to kind of like, how are we feeling about everything here?
Great.
And how can we make things better for you here? And what's working, what's not working here? We have one on the books next week. I hadn't thought of it as a summit, but I think it's going to end up being that. I just need to put. Bert doesn't really prep for a summit, but I do.
Yes, you do.
I'm a prepper.
Yeah, and you've done all the work in our work. I know you have. I know you have done all the discovery and all the analysis and proposed solutions for everything required for that summit. I know you do. I've seen it. We've evolved it. We've built it together, and now it's your time to take the action, right? And propose solutions and answers as a result of all the great discovery and work you've done.
Well, thank you. I think if anybody listening could take any advice, it would be that how you my brain again is losing words. We landed at 11 o'clock last night, so I'm a little bit tired.
You're great.
I think
You're great.
how you position things in your mind when you're facing them really matters. So if you position, this is going to be really hard. This is going to suck. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, if those are real things that you're saying about something you have to address, those are things you can figure out. I don't know what I'm talking about. So dig in and do the work to know what you're talking about.
There you go.
Maybe not 100%, but to know enough where you feel comfortable. If you say this is going to be terrible, well, why? Why is it going to be terrible?
Right.
Really question those things that you have, because those kind of limited or fear-based thoughts will keep you from maybe discovering something amazing.
You're absolutely right. You're
Right?
absolutely right. And that's what we do. You come in every session and we talk about what keeps you up at night. What are the issues of the day, the challenges, our opportunities of the day, and you verbalize them. When we put them on the whiteboard, and then we visualize them, right? And then we viscerally, attack it, right?
Yeah.
Just like you're saying. But you got to go through those steps as part of your discovery to move the passive into the explicit, right? And that's what you do. And that's what you're saying. It's great advice.
I think so. I think it's easier than people think. I think I just read this saying that says, anxiety really is the anticipation of the thing, but not the thing. So the thing usually, let's use going to the dentist as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Most people hate going to the dentist and are so anxious about it.
Right.
And then they get there, and not always, but usually it's not as bad as you think. Same for the doctor's appointment. Oh my gosh, the anxiety Bert has about going to the doctor's appointment. Every time he goes, he's healthy. Well, of course, there are times when that's not true. But for the most part, we're pretty healthy people. We have pretty good mouths. We have pretty good teeth.
Right.
That's that anticipation of the thing is worse than the thing. So the
Right.
anticipation of the looking at your profit and loss statement, just do it. And then if you find that you're in a loss position, you can start attacking that.
There you go.
But if you never look at it, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly right.
So it's
And that's what we're doing in thought partnering. You nailed it. I mean, you brought me in here to talk to you and your listeners about what thought partnering is. You've done a much better job than I ever could have.
I don't know about that.
You've done a much better job than I ever could have.
So the reverse to you then is, what is the advice you would give small business owners or family-owned businesses about running their business?
Yeah, great question. I think it's finding the support crew around you, right, to help fill in the gaps of your expertise at that moment, right? And you've done that. You surround yourself with a great team. Yes, you have your managers and your agents over here, but you're running a business, right? And what you've done, and you told me today, is that yes, you have Leo managing this part of your lives, right? We overlap. I overlap with Leo a lot on the financial side. But you just mentioned it at the top of this meeting, which was, how do I fill in the gaps in what I don't know about business, right? So I echo your recommendation, right? Which is go and find that person, formally or informally, to thought partner with, to talk about where the gaps are, right? In confidence, right? Because business owners are often in a lonely position, right? To your point, and I echo it, be, what's the word I'm looking for? Be open enough and willing to share and understand and be explicit about where your gaps are, right? And find someone to work them through with you. Because you're right, by yourself on your own, you may not break out of your own hypotheses, right, and your own unwillingness.
That's a good point. Is to put other eyes on it.
Put other eyes on it.
Yeah, if you put other eyes on it, they'll see something you don't see.
Don't be afraid to put other eyes on it.
Yes.
Right. And by the way, this is not just challenges and problems. This is also opportunities, right? I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about getting there. I'm thinking about selling this. I'm thinking about buying this.
Right.
Right. But I need shine another light on it, right? Put other eyes on it, right? Help you explore and look at it from many different ways, right? And the other point you and I talk about a lot is discovery before solution. Discovery. And you're great at that. Analysis, facts. Park the emotion, right? Define a strategic path, right? And then execute. And finally, I would say, you don't be afraid to place small strategic bets, right? As you grow your business. Strategic bets mean that you can afford them, right? They're not going to have a materially adverse impact on your business if they don't work out, right? But find a way to take risks, right? Analyzed risks, right? That are all contiguous with the direction you're going toward your strategic intent.
Right.
Right. But find a way to be comfortable taking strategic bets. Right. And this is where Leo's world, where he's very conservative, right?
He's very conservative.
In my world,
yes.
we work together to give people like yourself the comfort to to stretch, right? And to take those strategic bets.
That's a great piece of advice. Really great.
Cool.
Yeah, to take strategic risks. You have to do that. The cool thing about Think Partnering for your business is all of this can be applied to your personal life. All of it. Because every relationship is a business. It's a transactional. Every single relationship, that you don't have a single relationship that doesn't have some kind of back and forth and transaction, which is what a business is. So
that's right.
If you can remain open in your marriage, but have a hard time in your business, give it a try. If you can do it one place, you can do it in the other.
There you go.
It's just a little scary sometimes when it's in new territory. That remaining open is really smart because closed off just doesn't get you anywhere. Even in your marriage, with your kids. Your kids is like, definitely having kids is like having a business.
Sure.
There's so many different people with so many different agendas and different and different currency. Running from child to parent is totally different. So it's so funny. We have a couple that Bert and I talk to them about everything. Money, sex, marriage, not from a gossipy shit-talking place, but from a true spirit of learning. Because we're kind of like you said in the beginning, equals in that we're both happily married. We both have really high-achieving husbands. We both have, coincidentally, daughters. We both have, so many similarities.
Right.
We have other couples around us that we try to talk to them about sex, money, and, those marriage, those things are a little more sensitive and they're very closed.
Right.
Very closed.
Right.
And I don't know why. I always think if you have someone doing it right, maybe not 100% right, maybe not 100% lined up with you, but right enough that you go, that's a good resource for me.
Right.
That's who we ask when we're thinking about investing in Bitcoin, which we're not, but that's who I would ask. Hey, I'm having this trouble with this argument over and over again. That's who I ask.
Great.
I'm bored and I would love to go hang out with you guys. That's who we go to because we found this kind of similar place where we can think partner with them.
Great.
And I don't know why more people aren't open about talking about money, even negatively. Like if I had negative problems with money, I would still go to that same couple because we just trust each other and have this reciprocity.
Right.
And that just should be the goal, I think, for all your relationships is to find friends where you feel that way, to find another married couple where you feel that way, to find another group of parents.
There you go. Yeah.
And if you're a business owner, to find another business owner that's similar.
There you go. So and being open means so you don't get stuck in your own pool of biases, right? Everybody has a set of biases and you should be open enough to challenge them.
Yes.
In these meetings with these couples, do you guys I don't really like the school of thought as much as other people do. But bring a sense of vulnerability into those conversations.
What do you mean?
And just, there's a lot of people, a lot of couples you'll go to, and for example, when we talk about good thought partnering and not so successful thought partnering, are those people that know-it-alls, right? I'm the king of the universe. I don't need a thought partner. I don't need a shrink. I have all this, right?
No,
you can't talk to those.
No, that's not a partner.
There you go.
That's a boss.
That's exactly right.
That's a dictator.
That's exactly right.
No, they're not like that.
Right.
No.
Yeah, and people who aren't, coachable like that because they have all the answers. I got this, right? They never make good thought partners.
Right.
And I can suss that out very quickly.
Right.
And many times I let them know that this is not going to work, right? Don't hire me, right?
Right.
It's not going to be good use of your time or my time. For thought partnering, you need to, two things. You have to want to be coached and need to be coached. Those two things have to happen, and they have to continue throughout our work together, right? And that again, I'm making a list of what makes you such a great thought partner is that you're continuously reaffirming, whether you say it or not, that you need this and you want this.
Well, I'd say there's a third piece to that.
Please.
You got to need thought partnering, you got to want thought partnering, and you got to find the right one.
Great.
Right? Because therapy doesn't work if you're with the wrong therapist.
Yes.
You may need it, want it, and if that person is not right, you're not going anywhere.
Somebody told me when I was looking for a shrink in New York that it's just got to be spectacular.
Yeah.
Right? And if not, move on.
Yeah.
I apply the same litmus test to people when they're looking for a thought partner, or if I'm with them. I go, you tell me when this stops being spectacular, or we stop moving the needle, right? Or you feel stagnant. Let me know. And if we can't work through that, we'll part ways.
Gotcha. That's really good advice. And looking for this thought partner, even if it's in your hometown.
That's right.
They can't be a know-it-all. It can't be someone who's ego-focused and always right, who has every answer, and your answer is never a good answer. That's not a good thought partner. You have to have someone who's willing to say, well, let's figure that out and let's really explore whether it's, my opinion is, who cares where the idea comes from? As long as it's the best one. It doesn't matter if my gardener says, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? And I go, that's amazing. Let's throw it in the mix and see if that's what works. But someone who's like, nope, it's got to come from me is never going to be a good thought partner.
I love that. And to build on your earlier suggestion of looking for a thought partner or a mentor or coach in your hometown, I love that visual, right? And to build on that recommendation, I would add that you invite them out for a cup of coffee without an ask, right? In the first session, right? I want to learn more about your journey. I want to learn how you got to where you are, right? Would you mind if I spent 20 minutes with you over a cup of coffee? I see what you're doing in the business world. I aspire to go in that same direction. And I would just love to hear from you about your path to where you are today.
That's great.
And it's not an ask. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking for an internship yet, right? That can come down the road, right? But you're sitting down and getting them to talk about themselves.
Right.
And who doesn't like to talk about themselves, right?
Totally.
And talk about their path to where they are, especially in business.
Right.
So I think it's great advice. Big town or small town?
That is great advice. I love that. Any closing thoughts from you, Michael? Any advice?
No, I guess I'd close with a question. Where are you today in thought partnering? If you're comfortable saying, what topics are we talking about today? Or is it, want to keep that in the cone of silence behind closed doors, which is appropriate?
I'm talking about, I think that we are always making steps toward being more efficient, more refined, and again, making steps toward me being more creative in my day-to-day.
There you go.
So I have already made a couple of steps in that direction, and hopefully I'll make a couple more in the next week or so. And I'm starting to see where I will have less and less operational stuff on my plate and more creative stuff on my plate. So
Fantastic.
we're headed that way.
Fantastic. And that's, ding, ding, the success story right here with LeeAnn. Because as we started on day one, we work to get you where you want to be and to where you need to be, right? As a business professional, right?
Right.
And we've made phenomenal progress towards that.
I'm reading. Thank you. We did make phenomenal partners. I'm reading this great book about resilience. Really great book. The author of the book is coming on the show soon, so I don't want to talk too much about her book. Cool. But one thing she said about the book that just resonated with what you were saying is a key piece to resilience is confidence. And I think when I started working with you, I lacked a lot of confidence in what I was doing here as the quote, the boss, and the decisions I was making, because I don't have, I have the experience with my dad, but I don't have managerial experience. I had very little confidence. So in working with you, working with a think partner, the biggest thing that's grown for me is my confidence.
Yes.
Because I feel like you and Leo say to me regularly, no, this is the right line of thinking.
There you go.
No, this is the right direction. The way you're thinking is the right way to be thinking. It may not be the right answer, but it's the right way to think. So to just have that validation, because I come from a place of no experience managing people or running a company, that the confidence has been the biggest gift, so that it relieves me of what I needed from Bert in the beginning.
There you go.
Which was validation, not, hey, you're right, but validation that I wasn't like screwing it up.
That's exactly right.
That's the thing. I never needed to be like, you're right, you're the number one.
Right.
I just need to know I'm not screwing something up.
That's right.
So that has been the biggest gift, is just having this.
Thank you for saying that. That's great, because that validation and that confidence, the answer, what makes you special is that the answer has already been inside of you. It's like, Michael, what is this fair to say this outside with my team? Is this fair? And yes, we do explore the parameters and the boundaries of what's market, what's acceptable out there in the business world, right? And give you the confidence and the validation and the path to the action to go pursue that and execute.
Right.
Execute and build a successful business.
Right.
And that's what we're doing every day.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I'm so glad you came today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I hope that people listening learned something that they can apply in their own life, because that's the whole point, right?
Absolutely.
Have a conversation so you can apply it to your own life.
Yeah, and get some form of thought partner that's outside of your immediate company, outside your immediate family, so they can hopefully and ideally think objectively about you, your issues and challenges and opportunities, and have the experience to make you a better professional.
Totally. Just take the term thought partner. If you don't take anything else, just that term is so kind of specific. So when you could say to your spouse or your child or your teacher, your child's teacher at school, can we thought partner on something?
There you go.
That sounds very different than even can we have a conversation? Because when that term, thought partnering, I'd never heard of until Leo recommended you to me. And just that term just calibrates the intention of the meeting.
There you go.
Right?
That's right.
So just to use that term in your life with your boss or whoever can help you calibrate in your own intention what is happening.
That's right.
In this conversation.
That's right.
And your goal.
That's right. Park the emotion at the door. Park the politics at the door. Let's talk in a non-emotional, fact-based way, in a peer-to-peer equal form.
Yes.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Great recap. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Shall we go do our thought partner meeting?
Let's do it. I can't wait. I'm anxious to hear what's going on.